Well, from California, Oxnard, California, site of Dallas Cowboys Training Camp 2026, this is Football Friends. It's George Dunham, it's Bob Sturm, together in our element. Bob, we're at training camp, for gosh sakes.
We back, baby.
We are back.
So good to be here. And, we are at practice. We're talking to football players. We're feeling football-y. What a great place for football friends to reconvene.
It is. And there's nothing quite like training camp. There's nothing quite like training camp with the Cowboys. They're a lot like rock stars when they travel out of the state of Texas. I would say in all the years we've been coming here, now 20 years in Oxnard, California, and the first couple of years it was like, oh my God, the Cowboys are here.
Yeah.
And then it waned a little bit. It goes back and forth. But what we have seen in the first week of camp, huge crowds, lines going in to the parking lot. Did they market this different this year, or are people in Southern California feeling the vibe of football friends that this year could be different?
I think there's a legitimate vibe. I do think the Caleb Downs fever, the Christian Parker fever has done its job. And kind of built a little credibility and maybe a little patience with Cowboys fans that, okay, I'm ready to be heard again. I mean, that's the relationship between a fan and his team. So yes, it was noticeable in 24, to a lesser extent 25 because you had the new coach bump. But in 24, you get here and everybody's just like, yeah, I'm over this. I'm so good. How did you not fire McCarthy after the playoff game? And then they did nothing in that offseason. And so the entire idea of coming to camp was actually sort of exhausting because I think most of us saw what was likely to happen yet ahead. This one, and it's clearly the state of the league, but it's also this window of urgency, George, where people are now mostly agreeing that Dak Prescott is a big-time quarterback, but not necessarily agreeing that he's the best of the best, because he's not. But there's this window when a guy turns 33 that you're like, okay, borrowed time here. We got 2026, 2027, and maybe 2028 to try to go do something special with this group that's right here, right now, at these ages. It's not going to last forever. Dak will be 36 before we know it. That will put CeeDee Lamb like at 32, and that will put a lot of these guys closer to the edge of their window. Quinnen Williams will be older. Kenny Clark will be, so now is your time to try to make some noise. And honestly, I like how the roster looks in most spots right now, which even though you and I are definitely accused and guilty of being as optimistic as anyone with this team, at least on our radio station, I will try to convince myself that the quality of this roster is significantly better than it's been in recent years.
Yeah, I would say the difference this year is a lot of years I look at it and I try to follow it, and hey, this player is interesting, and sometimes that turns out to be DeMarvion Overshown, and he's a guy who does something for you in the regular season. Last year, Flanoid had a really good training camp, and he started to assert himself. So you can see things. I would say the difference this year is that I've almost had to talk myself into, I think they're going to be pretty good. But this year, and we'll talk about the player rankings, which is an assignment that you give each offseason, each training camp that makes me sweat. But it's really, I think, informative, and we'll get to that here in a bit. But this is, I don't have to convince myself or try to convince someone else. And yeah, they're better. They're better at a lot of positions on defense that we'll talk about. I think this offense has a chance to be even better than they were last year, and they need to be.
Yeah.
There were some times where they weren't perfect last year, and they need to be. I do get a different feeling overall about this team.
Well, there's a couple other things that are key to me. One is we don't have any real strong drama of, hurt feelings or upset player or whatever the case may be. I mean, we can go back almost every year and talk about, okay, Zeke is in Cabo. All right, well, Dak isn't thrilled. CD's holding in. Okay, well, this one, Micah, it wants to be traded. And, just start going down the list of the annual California controversies or talking points. I mean, there are times where the state of the team address are all about one player who's upset with his money or their future, or the team is trying to make an example out of him and explaining us the pieces of the pie. Heck, there was a year not so long ago where they delayed the press conference because Jerry had to appear in court, and
true
for a family personal matter, if you will.
Yeah.
But so there's usually some cowboy circus mixed in. And there's none of that. And then there's also usually either a coach in peril or a real suspect cutting of the corner in the leadership department. And what I mean by that is last year it appeared like the Jones family just grabbed Matt Eberflus out of the break room and made him defensive coordinator when literally no one else was asking for that. And the year before, Mike Zimmer. Oftentimes with coordinators or with important pieces in this organization, they almost talk the head coach into, well, what about this guy because he's worked well here before, and it never felt like that is Garrett's idea or Schottenheimer's idea or McCarthy's idea. It almost feels like they were giving in a conversation at dinner with Stephen and Jerry. Whereas the Christian Parker hire and, frankly, the Clayton Adams hire the year before, they both really feel like Brian Schottenheimer found somebody that he really wanted, and they greenlit the idea of going to get that person.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I do too.
And the fans should love that.
Absolutely. And I think that says, for those tuning in and listening for, okay, well, what have you guys seen at camp? The story is the defense. There's no doubt. It looks different in so many ways, from alignment to scheme and what they're trying to do. And the players that are out there, it really jumps off the field to me. And we'll talk about individuals, but just overall, let's talk about the Christian Parker defense and what that looks like. And one thing you can plainly see in practice is, okay, looks like this is going to be pretty standard set against a 3-wide set, and they got nickel in. Oh, wait a minute. Right as the ball is snapped, it's a totally different look. Now the nickel corner could be Caleb Downs. Is blitzing, and you've got a guy coming from the other side of the field who is, in other words, they give you a lot of different looks at the snap of the ball. That's part of it, but it's also designed to make you earn every yard that you're about to try to gain as an offense.
Yeah, I get asked periodically to sort of, try to explain what Christian Parker's doing and how is that different. And we had fun with Dan Quinn and his defense, partly because for a big part of it, you had Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, and that was really fun. But I don't want to say you can run any scheme with Micah Parsons or Myles Garrett, but you can get away with it because you have a double-digit rolling out of bed sack guy who can make your scheme look great. Except the problems, of course, is the Cowboys got bullied on the ground, and it wasn't. I disagree with the idea that Micah was a below-average run defender because I don't think he ever was. But I do think that the Cowboys as a group put so much premium into rushing the passer that they had no ballast to stop the run. So what you're doing here with Christian Parker and the Vic Fangio defense is they're really emphasizing stop the run and earn the right to rush the passer on later down. So you hear that a lot. But, okay, so how do you do it? And really the idea is with Fangio, lighter boxes, which means usually 6 bigs are on the field. So when people say 3-4 or 4-3, if you add up those two numbers, you get 7. That's not the case. So we always talk about how nickel is now base in the NFL, and there's a reason for that. NFL teams run nickel, 5 DBs, meaning there are only 6 bigs left if you go to 11 defenders. If you got 12, you got too many. That's a flag. So you have a 4-2 or a 5-1, or in some rare cases a 3-3 with 3 down linemen and 3 linebackers behind it. But usually it will be a 4-2 or a 5-1 is what you play up front when you have nickel. The Cowboys will always have nickel because they drafted Caleb Downs. I just don't think there's going to be any Downs where he's healthy this year where they're like, he's not one of the 11 guys we want on the field. So if Caleb Downs is out there, he technically is not going to be one of your 2 safeties. He could, but probably not. And he's not going to be one of your 2 corners. He's going to be that 5th DB. Usually we would have a slot corner in Dallas. It would be Orlando Scandrick or somebody like that through the years. Deron Bland has done that, of course. But the Cowboys and the NFL are both moving more and more towards that is a safety, a box safety who plays essentially a linebacker almost type position, but at like 200 pounds. And the idea is to get speed, processing, IQ, all of that, but also a guy who can defend anything. So he can defend a tight end, he can defend a slot receiver, he can defend a running back. Now, we saw yesterday he tried to run with Cavante Turpin, and as good as Caleb Downs is, there are going to still be mismatches. This is a freakish league. But if you can make that your 7th box defender, but also he can drop out of there, and also he can blitz, and so that you're trying to put uncertainty in your opponent. Cooper DeJean does this great in Philadelphia. They do the same thing with him, and you will find guys around the league who replicate this from Derwin James to Minka Fitzpatrick through the years, and just guys who are sort of, they call them jokers, because in the room the offense has to assume, like a joker in a deck of cards, this can represent any of the positions. So just be ready. He's the extra man. Behind that, they play a ton of zone. Not all. Philadelphia actually played more man last year than the Cowboys did. But it's a ton of zone. But here's the key. The Dallas Cowboys were 32nd last year in disguise. Now, disguise is measured simply as pre-snap versus post-snap. So imagine you're a quarterback and you're walking up to the line of scrimmage, and you get under center and you start looking and you spot those safeties. That's the number one thing they ask quarterbacks to do is find where are your safeties and what are they telling you. And the Cowboys were 32nd in the league. Fangio defenses are always near the top of we are going to show you something. And in the case of Fangio, it's almost we're always going to show you shell. And shell means too high, okay? That is shell coverage or a two shell. They call it a number of very similar things. But they're going to start in too high, and they may stay there. They run a ton of – they almost run zero cover two, but a ton of cover four, cover six, which is quarter, half. Cover four, of course, is quarters. And they can cover 9. There are a number of different things they can do. The general point, though, is they will rotate out of that 2 shell into something completely different. And what the reason this happened, not to get too far into the weeds, George, but the reason this happens is Shanahan and McVay.
Yeah.
So Shanahan and McVay about a decade ago put in what many consider a very basic offense, and obviously they didn't. I mean, Shanahan's dad actually is thought of as one of the first to kind of use outside zone with play action rollouts the other way, and kind of marrying the run and the pass in such a way it causes fits for defenses. So the way to counter a play action offense is fuzzy up your disguises and try to make them wrong. So real quick, a play action fake from under center. So you're my quarterback, George. Yeah. Okay. So you're facing the safeties. Now you need to do a play action fake.
Am I going to open up left or open up right?
Right. But here's the quote. Okay. You pick. But when you do that, when you are doing the play action fake, you got Tony Dorsett behind you, right?
Oh, man, that's great.
You're going to go back there, and you're going to do what? Where's your eyes?
As I look back at Tony Dorsett?
Yeah.
I'm looking right at him. So I'm looking away from the defense.
So can you see the safeties?
No.
Okay, so now I'm faking it. Now I turn back around, and the safeties aren't where I left them.
Yeah.
So that's the entire idea.
Take away the effectiveness of the play action
like
pass.
When you snap the ball, I bet you most quarterbacks are like, okay, I know what I'm getting here. I know what I want to do. And then they turn their back, and now they turn back again to look back at the safeties, and now it's single high. And where'd that other – the safety's cutting off the dig route. And that's how interceptions happen.
Yeah.
It happened to
Dak. They can make you look really bad.
Yes, and so you get – now, there are quarterbacks that have seen everything, that know your tricks, and they're smart too.
Yeah.
I mean, Matthew Stafford, he's seen some things, okay? Yeah. But
even though they're showing this, we know that in this situation – a lot of times they will switch to that.
Yes, and so the Cowboys in 2025, not to revisit that train wreck, but we have to. And they were 32nd in the league in disguise, which means every time you looked at them pre-snap, that's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like they were so simple.
The sitting ducks.
They were so simple, and part of the reasons they'll tell you they were simple is because when we tried to get complicated,
couldn't do it.
We beat ourselves because nobody's guarding this guy, and what's going on here, and who I thought you had him, and so they could not communicate. So when you hear about, boy, we got to all be on the same page, we got to communicate, because if you're going to be complicated and try to fool the offense, you better all be on the same page so you don't fool yourself.
Yeah.
So that's the idea: is disguise, light boxes, positionless football. So you want a lot of hybrids. You want safeties who can cover. You want corners who can tackle. You want guys who can do different things, not one-dimensional. And if you can do all of that, and you got some dudes, now you've built a defense that suppresses explosive plays, generates takeaways, and is just not that fun to play against, which we've seen in Philadelphia for a couple years now since Fangio got there. I guess him and Christian Parker got there in the spring of 24, and they went right to the Super Bowl and won. And then last year their defense was really pretty solid again, and that got Parker this job.
Well, and it's one thing that you can have all sorts of crazy schemes and a new coaching staff, which they do on the defensive side of the ball, but you got to have dudes. And the dudes look so much better on that side of the ball, just on paper, and now we've had a chance to see them in person. You're talking 6 new starters. I know Kobe Durant has jumped off to you. I've seen him make some plays. That's the guy the Cowboys got from the Rams this offseason. Mm-hmm. And I remember when they signed him, I thought, wow, that's a really good signing. That will help them at corner. Jalen Thompson looks like a dude who they signed in free agency from Arizona. Rashawn Gary, I know he took some heat that he wasn't going to be worth the money that maybe he was making and that he was going to make, but man, he's better than anything else the Cowboys had on the edge last year after Parsons got traded.
No doubt. And that's, again, he's not Micah Parsons. Rashawn Gary will probably tell you he's not Micah Parsons, but that's not what he's being brought here to be. He's being brought here to be a piece of a very stout front. And I think Jalen Thompson is worth circling back on just a little bit, because I do think they had him earmarked for the Caleb Downs role in the event they couldn't get Caleb Downs on draft day, which is the hybrid nickel safety.
Yeah.
Who can play deep, but he's actually better the closer you get him to the ball. So I think there will be times this year when they're both healthy that they'll mess with the defenses by dropping Caleb back and sneaking Jalen up there. And I think most offenses will say, oh, Caleb's deep. Okay, we're good. And then they got Jalen Thompson doing some crazy stuff down there. Because at Arizona, he was one of those guys where you would say, okay, nickel, kind of that star position, kind of that nickel safety. Could Jalen Thompson be the answer to what we need? And I think the Cowboys felt like we better cover ourselves in case we don't get him. We get the guy we want. And I remember, I think I pitched to you on Football Friends, should we be sniffing around on Minka Fitzpatrick? And I love Minka, but he is pretty high miles on the odometer. He would have been better than Marquise Bell.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they said, well, why don't we just go get the kid from Ohio State? He's got 0 miles on his odometer. That sounds amazing. So I think the Jalen Thompson thing gives them really good insurance for injury, but also multiplicity if everybody's out there, where you got a couple safeties that are really nice movable chess pieces that can work off each other.
Yeah. I've been around so long that I remember Michael Irvin as a rookie on this very field, as a matter of fact, because the Cowboys came up to Oxnard to scrimmage the Raiders. I remember when Russell Maryland stepped on the field for the first time as a rookie, and Emmitt Smith.
Yeah.
And guys just, wow, okay, that guy is something. And look, I don't claim to be an NFL veteran or anything like that, but Caleb Downs, all you got to do is just watch 5 minutes, and you go, who's 13? Because if you just dropped in here to this camp, you'd go, okay, well, who's 13? Third-year pro?
Yeah.
No, he is a rookie, and we'll get into a discussion about how they're going to use him in the preseason, but I just want to talk about players that I've noticed.
Okay.
Obviously, that's the obvious one. You come out here.
Yep.
I like what you had to say about Kobe Durant. Devin Moore really has jumped off to me. He's the 4th-round pick from Florida. I don't know where he is in this rotation, but doggone, he's better than anything else I saw out there for the Cowboys.
He's a big
playing
dude.
Corner. I really like the way he's physical. Jayshawn Barham is maybe the story of training camp on the defensive side. I've noticed him, but I've talked to some people and said, man, he's ready to do some things, and he's really going to help us.
Yes.
And in other words, this rookie class, Malachi Lawrence has shown well.
Right.
And it looks like they've hit on guys. We'll see in the preseason and certainly when the real stuff starts. But, man, they made a concerted effort. They've got input from new defensive coaches who say, no, this is what we're looking for. And you just yesterday I was on the sideline standing next to the defensive guys who were out of 11 on 11. And just looking around, the eyeball test is much better than that unit last year.
I agree. Yeah. It's I feel like the assembly of pieces really followed a strict plan this year. Like they are looking for a certain type of guy who can offer a certain type of things, and it's just so invigorating. It just feels like a real smart plan has been enacted on this defense in particular to try to put the right pieces out there and do it in a way that your resources can sort of cover your need list, your shopping list.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get crazy. Now, if you wanted to say what would you have loved to see even more, yeah, there's no doubt if Max Crosby was standing out there right now, or even Jordan Brooks, if they could have got him out of Miami, that would have been awesome. But the resources either of them would have required would have been another salary in the $25 to $30 million range. And I just don't know, with George Pickens' future uncertain, I don't know that I want to give my George Pickens money to anybody but George Pickens right now.
Yeah.
He's 25, and he just had 1,500 yards or whatever he had and like a dozen touchdowns. And I am not necessarily ready to walk away from him at the end of this season. And therefore, if I had Max Crosby, if I had Jordan Brooks, I'm probably making that decision already, and I don't want to. So I'm going to be a little stubborn about that idea. I'm going to say Max Crosby's ship sailed a little bit when they went and got Rashawn Gary at a lesser price. And maybe you're getting a lesser player. You probably are. But I think there's been some real common sense in roster building in the last 12 to 18 months. And I think you hit it. Those second, third, and fourth round picks, maybe even the late first and Malachi Lawrence. But if you start looking at the list of guys from this draft class and you start to say, okay, do I feel great about, Barham? do I feel great about Devin Moore and LT Overton. And heck, my 5th rounder was used for D. Winters. He's a veteran, of course, but I sent my 5th round pick to go get D. Winters. And you start looking at those pieces. All 4 of them are defensive pieces. If you throw in Malachi Lawrence, that's 5. So Lawrence, Barham, Devin Moore, Overton, D. Winters. 5 dudes who are all capable. I don't have any of them as a starter right now. Maybe D. Winters. I'm trying to figure out that second linebacker situation. Probably D. Winters. But all 5 of them are just quality pieces that I'm not asking to start right away, that I have in reserve if I have some attrition, which I always will. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Do you know some of the guys we've had to push onto the field in the last couple of years when injuries hit?
Yeah.
Like it is literally get him off his couch and get him over here.
Yeah.
And dude, they started, I want to say they started 8 different corners last year.
That sounds about right.
I challenge any football friends at P1 to list 8 Cowboy corners right now, like from last season.
Yeah.
If you can name all 8 who started, you certainly deserve some Muthers merch. But I mean, that's a real brain tease. That one is. Nobody can name 8 Cowboy corners from last year's team.
There's no way, and some of those guys aren't on this roster.
Thankfully.
So no kidding. They had to switch that out. So defense, certainly the story of camp to this point and the new look, and there is hope on that side. Offensively, can you take the next step? As good as the Cowboys were last year in production, they were not good in converting it into touchdowns. They were 16th in touchdown percentage in the red zone. That's not good enough.
No.
Believe it or not, there were teams like Seattle and New England that were worse than that last year, but they were really good on the defensive side of the ball. So that has been a point of emphasis. That's another thing I've noticed in camp in this first week. Cowboys in the red zone, man, they put on a clinic between CD, Pickens, Ferguson, Flanoy, and 4 still pretty darn good, as someone said to me yesterday on the sideline. Keeping on that 4. He looks like he's a pretty good player. Sometimes we take it for granted because of his lack of success in the postseason, but I think this offense is capable of taking that next step because it looks like they've said it publicly now. Tyler Guyton is the starting left tackle, and he's had a great offseason. I think they are trying to pump him up a little bit, but I see the arrow pointed up for the offense too.
Yeah, well, they need that left tackle to come through. There's no doubt about it. That's an incredibly important situation for them, and that's one of my 2 real big. I don't want to say concern. Well, yeah, it is a concern.
Yeah.
Left tackle's a concern, and
because I don't want to mess with my left guard and put him out there.
And what do I do if I lose Javonte Williams for a month?
Well, that was my other thing. You're going to be in trouble because he is so dependable, so consistent. But I got to tell you, Bob, in my first week out here, every time I look up, Jaden Blue is running down the sideline carrying the football either on a run or a screen or a little swing pass. They say that come to Jesus that he had with the offensive coaches last year has made a difference, and
he's ready to be
I think
a pro.
he's got yes, and we'll see. He's got to show it. He had a problem at Texas hanging onto the ball.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt he's the fastest guy in that backfield. And if you got a home run hitter now, a guy who is, just a little bit of a change up from what Javonte is, man, you may have a new weapon on this team.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the key with Jaden Blue is going to be when you don't have the ball, can you help us on the field? Because the last thing you want, of course, is a guy who, when he checks into the game, everybody knows, well, this play's obviously for him because they don't want him blocking. They don't want him doing any of these other things that, limit his versatility. The thing about Javonte Williams that makes him so incredibly valuable is, well, there's several things. But the biggest one from this conversation is he's so versatile. that you can kind of ask him to do anything you would ask a running back to do. And that is kind of what separates him from all of his backups. So when I continue to repeat that I don't think they're prepared to deal with the Javonte Williams injury, it's purely they don't have another versatile running back. They have some guys who can do A and B but not C and D.
Yeah.
And guys who can do C and D but not A and B. And I think Jaden Blue is in that conversation just because he's small. And you know, this is a tough league when linebackers are trying to get to the quarterback and you got to stand in front of that truck. Physics takes over.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can try. Yeah, but if you're 180 and you're trying to block 215 or 220 at a full sprint, it goes poorly usually. And that's why Javonte is so valuable. But that's also why Javonte was dead by Thanksgiving, is because they're asking him to take 55 snaps out of 55 because they don't trust anybody else. And so that's why I thought part of the plan was get a trustworthy backup. But they are like, no, we drafted Blue and we drafted Maffa, and we think both of them are players in this league. Very different. I mean, there's like a 50-pound difference between them.
Yeah.
But they think that they have the solutions on hand, and so this will be one of the many preseason questions to figure out.
All right. Let's go this direction next. Bob does this every year. He ranks the roster. And I don't know if we'll go 1 through 60, but we'll give you our top 10 next, and we could have controversy next in Football Friends. Okay, Bob, how many years in a row have you done this, where you've ranked the roster, and then you've gotten your friends to rank it along with you?
Yeah, 2024 was the first time I did it. So this is the third annual roster ranking, Georgie.
Do you get mine every year and just laugh and go, God, what has George done this year?
No, you're a very valuable voting member. Without you, I don't have the guts to assemble this type of project. I think it's way more valuable, even though I'm as narcissistic as the next guy. It's way more valuable to have multiple cooks in the kitchen for this sort of thing, because I get ideas, I get agendas, I've got takes to defend that I might subconsciously rank somebody higher to sort of support my biases. So I got you, and I got a bunch of our writer friends like John Machota and Joseph Hoyt and Saad Youssef.
See,
and
I
Nick
trust
Harris.
those guys a lot more than I trust myself.
Well,
I really do.
But you're important. You're the big man.
Well, I don't know. I always feel pretty good about my top 20 or top 25. After that, I'm not going to deny that I may flip a coin.
Well, that's fine. And so the exercise, and people can do this at home if they would like to. If they're a real football sicko, you can do this too, where you just take the roster, even the training camp roster, there are 90 names, and rank them 1 to 60. So obviously you got 30 cuts. Now, 60 is not the number. 53 is the number. But with injuries and with the practice squad, I just get out to 60 to see basically who's on the bubble to make the roster. And then how do you line them up? I just say line them up as if the best example is, let's say there's an expansion draft and you can only protect one player. Who are you protecting?
Well, that's a good way to look at it.
Okay, and then we'll drop it down to 5. Okay, you can only protect 5 Cowboys that you are keeping. Doesn't matter their age. Shouldn't even matter their contract that much. And we try to leave just positional value, so we're not just putting all the quarterbacks and left tackles and wide receivers up top. We're trying to actually identify the best, let's say, 12 football players. Okay, now do the best 14, and you're just lining them up like you would in middle school, and from this side to the other side, my most valuable piece to my 60th most valuable piece.
It's an interesting drill, and I know I have a controversial one in my top 10.
Okay.
I'll give you my top 10. The guy I would protect first is CeeDee Lamb. I think he's the best player on this team. He's the most explosive player on this team. If it had been a couple years ago, I would have made it Quinnen Williams, but I have CD number 1.
The panel agrees with you. The panel put him at number 1. I put him at number 2, but there's nothing at all wrong with CeeDee Lamb being your very best football player on this roster.
Who's your number 1?
My number 1 is Dak Prescott.
Okay.
And you know, last year I think I had him at number 3. I think I went Micah, CD, and then Dak. maybe 4. I'm trying to remember. But Dak has had some years where you're like, you know what? This guy is absolutely what I need him to be. And I just thought in 2025 he took such strides of leadership, ownership of this thing. He's really made it his, and his pre-snap and post-snap intelligence is as high as it's been. And I also think his body is still healthy enough. We always talk about the merger. So, basically build a slanted line from the low part as a rookie is your football IQ to the high part when you retire. You've seen every defense, right? Yeah. And then the opposite is a decline of athleticism or your body's health. And that starts at its highest when you're a rookie, and it drops to its lowest by the time you have to retire, often because of injury. So that intersection where your IQ has risen to as high as it can go and your health is still really high, that intersection doesn't last long, but we call that a quarterback's prime.
Yeah.
In fact, when the light went on for Romo and his body started failing, almost the same time.
Yeah.
He had some good years. I don't mean
to. Back started giving him trouble, and
the best
got
version
planted in Seattle.
Yes, the best intelligence version of Tony Romo though was 2014, and that was like the last healthy season he had.
Yeah.
And so if we can squeeze 3 to 5 years out of Dak where he's in that intersection and his body's still real strong, but his brain is bigger than it's ever been, I think that's where you get really excited. So I put Dak at 1.
I had CeeDee Lamb 2. I have Tyler Smith. I almost put him 1 because I think he's the best player at his position in this league, or at least in the conversation. And I think he has leadership on this team, and he's just, I don't know, maybe I'm swayed with just what a good dude he is, but yeah, I've got him 2nd.
I had him 4th, and when you're this high in the conversation, I think 1 through 5, every one of the guys could be. You can make a case that they're the best, and I think that there are times in their career, or there will be times in their career, where they are the best player on their roster. So I've got no problem with Tyler Smith very high. I put him 4th. My 2nd was CD, so I went Dak, CD, and then Quinnen Williams.
Yeah, that's what I have as my number 3, and he's still so good in this league. And you made the point this week out here that, heck, he's 28, so it's not as if he is a graybeard, and
right.
We didn't really get to see what he can do last year because it was such a mess on the defensive side that we didn't get to see what I think we're going to see this year.
I agree, and I think to a lesser extent you could say the same about Kenny Clark, because Kenny Clark has never been to Oxnard. This is his first training camp.
Yeah.
So, these guys, if you want them to be leaders and you want them to be the movers and shakers on the defensive line, you gotta get the full year. You got to get them up to speed where not everything, they're trying to get their family settled in a work week, and then they got to get out to the field and play on Sunday. And I just think we don't realize how good Quinnen Williams is yet. He is unbelievably great, and I think this scheme is going to be perfect for him. So I think you absolutely could have put him number 1 as well.
And then I have at number 5, George Pickens. I'm sorry, I just think he is right behind CeeDee Lamb, and you've got them both on your team, and that's pretty lethal, the fact that you have 2 receivers like that.
Yeah, I think you and I have 5 and 6 identical, because I see we both went George Pickens 5 and Tyler Booker 6.
And I had Booker in my top. I think I had him in my top 10 last year. I just love him. Man, the Cowboys are loaded at guards when you have Booker and Tyler Smith. I mean, that is amazing, and that's a guy whose arrow is pointed up.
Yeah, I wonder at what point of the season I'll want to have put Caleb Downs in front of Tyler Booker, though. That's the interesting one with me, is I'm obviously not there yet. I'm going to need to see one game. But do I – so 1 through 5, almost identical on everyone's ballot. Dak, CD, Quinnen, Tyler Smith, and George Pickens in some order. But those are your top 5 players, and then there's a tier shift. And the next tier does appear to be Tyler Booker and Caleb Downs on some level, and Brandon Aubrey if you have him that high. And
well, I unfortunately do. I'm going to get yelled at probably from all the not necessarily from you, but I got yelled at last year because I didn't put him in the top 10 by some other people. So I put him 7th just because Brandon Aubrey, because he is a lethal weapon, and I know it wasn't as accurate beyond 50 as the season drew to a close last year, but he's such a weapon. He's so accurate, historically accurate from long distance, and to me there's great value. And how about this? He could be even more valuable this year if this team could get some stinking turnovers, and especially at the end of a half, and line him up for a 65-yarder that could go through.
Yes, he's a great kicker. I just want to...
I have a bias towards special teamers.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with that. Special teams are very important. I would just ask the question, could Brandon Aubrey take me from a good team and make me a very good team or a great team? Like, does he decide games? And I realize he actually makes the kick that does decide games.
You could have the best kicker in the NFL and you could be a bad team.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And then I also saw this last season, and this does bother me, even though I do think this is a really good coaching staff, is I do think you begin to alter your offense to secure field goals. I don't, when you look at their red zone deficiency, that may not apply, but they love to know that Brandon Aubrey can hit from 60.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if it's 3rd and 12 and you're right on the edge of the 60, do you call like a run play to get your kicker a few more yards, or are you actually still trying to move the chains because you have George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb? Like, shouldn't you always be trying to score touchdowns? And does having one of the best kickers almost make you protect par by not getting crazy on your birdie putt?
But sometimes maybe you go for birdie when you're at, say, and right now it's a 48-yard field goal, so you don't feel as bad about a sack. If I do take a sack and I'm going to try to hit something downfield, I still know I can make a 59-yarder.
Well, I mean, according to your list, you would put Brandon Aubrey in front of Caleb Downs. And
at least he's played the game.
You may need to go out to the practice field and apologize to Caleb today.
I probably will. And we haven't seen the guy play.
That's right.
But he's a top 10 player on this roster. I don't think there's any question. He jumps right in. He's young.
Yeah.
But, man, he's just, as you made the point today, we were talking about if you're amazing at Alabama and Nick Saban swears that maybe he's the best freshman he's ever coached, and then you go do the same thing at Ohio State.
Right.
And you have all these coaches here saying, oh, man, he's just different. I can't wait to watch him play in meaningful games this year, and I think he will make them more meaningful because he's going to make some plays.
Yeah, and you know what? We had this conversation back in the spring that I was a little nervous how we were pumping his tires so full of hope and change that we might be doing a disservice to Caleb Downs, and that's all true. I'm still right there, but I just want people to understand that when we get crazy about Caleb Downs, here's where we're coming from. We've watched 25 years of this team completely act like safety is just like a sign-up sheet on the door of hey, who wants to play safety? Because we're not going to spend any capital on it. We're not going to give you a contract. We're not going to build our scheme around you. We haven't had a safety since Darren Woodson.
Yeah.
And
that's the last one you actually invested some draft capital in.
Right.
Roy Williams, yeah.
But when you start looking at the guys through the years, and God bless Barry Church and Gerald Sensabaugh and freaking Lynn Scott and Jeff Heath, and just going down the list of all the dudes we've seen play safety around here, all the way to Donovan Wilson last year. I just want to say I'm so thrilled that they have gone to go get one of these safeties. Because, man, when you watch the NFL outside of Dallas, how many teams who are awesome have awesome safeties? Like, We can do this all day. We can do Brian Dawkins here and Ed Reed here and go all the way back to freaking Steve Atwater and Leroy Butler.
Yeah.
But you can then pull it forward to, like I said, Minka Fitzpatrick and Derwin James and who's Hamilton there in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And you just start going down the list of the best defenses have these awesome high IQ ball hawk awesome safeties, and we freaking got one finally, and it's just it's a delight. I don't want to promise everybody that it's going to be an interception and a sack every game from this kid, because that's way too much to ask of any safety, let alone a rookie. But I think it is going to be transformative, and I do think we're going to look at that pick for quite a while and say, how did he get to 11?
Can't wait to watch him play. And here's another offensive lineman I have in the top 10, Cooper Beebe at number 9, and then Javonte Williams rounds out my top 10 at number 10. I have 3 linemen in the top 10, which is why, man, if Guyton has taken a step forward and Steele can hold it together, they remain relatively healthy, this offensive line could be just terrific.
Yeah, and then my 8, 9, and 10 look like Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, and Jake Ferguson, which
I had them right out of the top 10, so right there with you.
Yeah. And you know what? I have Javonte Williams too low. I have him at 15th, and he's one of those guys that when you do talk to Cowboy people, like especially if you're off air, and you start talking to them about Javonte Williams, man, they are like, you don't understand. Almost like Kenny Clark on the defense. Like, you don't understand what he means in that room.
Yeah.
In terms of tone setting, in terms of, hey, guys, follow me. And that if you have a running back who is a dog, there's a value in that is tough to measure, but you just don't want your running back to be a guy who reads the Wall Street Journal and gets his nails done. You want a guy who's leading the charge into the street fight, and that's Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
So I love him. We got to keep him healthy. The last year was the best year of his career by a pretty good margin. And if he can keep rolling those out, he got his 3-year deal. Love that. It's actually a really good number for the Cowboys, too. So happy he got paid, but also happy they didn't get crazy. And so I think Javonte's a great way to end your top 10.
So, see, nothing but flowers out here from Cowboys training camp in Oxnard, California. There is something that I won't say it's a shadow over the training camp, but it is an interesting story. And it has to do with espionage. And we're going to talk about that next. Football friends from Oxnard, California, and Cowboys training camp. And we should say this before we have this discussion. Coaches are paranoid.
Yes.
Football coaches are paranoid. And I've been around some before at the college ranks who just knew that as they were practicing, before we had the worlds of indoor facilities and practice fields, a lot of times you would practice on your field, and in the stands there would be someone that the coach didn't know, and he would get one of his equipment guys to run up and say, find out who that is. I bet he's a spy. And they always thought they were being spied on, or who's that guy hovering around the practice facility, and who is that guy? So
why did George Allen buy a house in Valley Ranch?
Right. Yeah. All that stuff. It's just, yeah.
Was that true?
No, because that timeline doesn't match up, because he was 70s and Valley Ranch didn't open until 85, I think.
Dang it. I want it to be true.
No. But there were claims that I think there were buildings around the Cowboys' old practice field on Forest. And,
yeah.
That the Eagles or someone had a spy. There's Spygate in New England anyway. So out here is as you try to consume Cowboys training camp, no doubt you've watched some video on social media that's put out by guys who cover the Cowboys, who write for the Dallas Morning News or the Athletic or whoever it is, and they're out here covering camp. And it's content for them. And I got to tell you, as someone who tries to consume as much about the Cowboys, I watch it. And before we got out here at camp, I watched a lot of their highlights and thought, oh, that's an interesting play. And
Yeah.
so you could see why if you're a coach of this team, and by the way, the practice fields here at Oxnard, they are surrounded by stands, and then at the one end of the practice facility, there are condominiums and apartments that overlook the practice field.
That's right.
So if Philly wanted to, they could buy one of those or rent one of them for the summer. Anyway, so you're putting this content out online. And there was a discussion between the Cowboys and those who were doing that this week of that needs to stop. And for what I have learned is that when Christian Parker got here, he informed Brian Schottenheimer, hey, man, when I was in Philly, we watched a lot of your stuff from training camp.
Yeah.
Because your writers are up putting plays and, sometimes we took it from in the stands and whatever. So all of a sudden, about midway through the week, the edict was put out, no more. Well, the writers threw a fit. Some of them did.
Yeah.
And it's part of their job, and it's popular. I don't have the stats in front of me. I bet they get a lot of clicks on it.
Right.
And then the PR department talked to them about it, and they took to their complaints and understood that. And then understanding that this is a coach's edict of, hey, that's enough of that. We're trying to win a football game here. Jerry was consulted about this, and his answer was, it's fine, let him do it.
Right.
So now they're back and doing it. I don't know what I think about it. I do think that I wonder what Brian Schottenheimer's reaction to it was when he learned, wait, we're still doing that?
Yeah.
It does kind of show that there's one guy in charge here.
I was going to say.
And he's more thrilled with, hey, I don't mind coverage of my team. I don't care who's doing it.
Yeah, and this goes back to the ultimate question of, would anybody take the Cowboys coaching job, or do you have to be a certain type of guy to take the Cowboys coaching job? And I think we have said properly that there are certain coaches, and I know Bill Cowher has said it, and I'm trying to remember who else, that they just would not be interested in working under these circumstances. And what are you talking about circumstances? Well, the circumstances are that at any point, in many NFL markets, at any point, if the head coach feels a certain way about a certain thing, he can get it done because he's the head coach. And here it's just not like that. Here, a head coach only has about 90% of the power of a normal head coach.
Yeah.
And the other 10% is it's very flexible because you never know when it's going to be used, that other 10%, but just be aware that if you want to bench a certain player or cut a certain player or enact a certain policy or just, no phones in the locker room or whatever you want to say, no ping pong tables in my locker room, whatever you want to say about your team that would work if you were a college coach, a high school coach, or an NFL coach in like 25 cities, that may not be true here. And so that can mean a million things. That can mean, are we doing Hard Knocks this year? That could mean, just all manner of things where a head coach says, not doing it. And Dan Campbell probably has that autonomy in Detroit. Matt LaFleur probably has that autonomy in Green Bay. And you just start going down the list of Ben Johnson can absolutely say what he wants to do in Chicago.
Wants, yeah.
And so those guys can do that where no, there's no more videos online during my practices. There's just not. And in fact, if you push back on this, we'll get all the media out of here too. And you can show up as a fan unless we spot you, and then we're kicking you out of there too. So there's a number of – heck, there's nothing that says NFL teams have to have open training camps.
No, they do it for
marketing. They do it to grow the brand. And should we ever confuse how important growing the brand is to the ownership family of this franchise, I think we know the answer there. So yes to Hard Knocks. Yes to literally anybody that wants to give our franchise publicity, if Netflix wants to build something around our cheerleaders, if, just whatever the case is, we are open for your free marketing.
It does make me wonder, though, do teams, obviously the Eagles invested on, hey, put some guy that just joined the staff and his job is to go through YouTube and see what's up there, or go through X or, Instagram, whatever it's on. But it also makes me wonder, do teams spy? Do they spy to the point of, I got a guy in Dallas who lives in Frisco and works for whatever the company is that overlooks the Cowboys. And has it gotten so far that when the Cowboys go back home or when they're out here, when they're on an open field, do they feel restricted as to what they can run? Do all the stuff that they're going to run that's different for a given game, do they have to run it inside the Ford Center and not on the natural grass?
And that's so crazy. I mean, to people that are listening to us that don't know what George is referencing, their full-time practice facility is surrounded by office space that the team leases out to companies that are willing to pay the rent to have an office that overlooks the Cowboys practice facility, which, again, is about as crazy as you can get. Now, I'm positive you can jack the rent up to whatever you want for a law firm or a real estate company to say, we want an office where we can show our people that there is an NFL team, not just any NFL team, the Dallas Stinking Cowboys practice right outside my office window. And all through the season, as they're prepping for games, big games, could be playoff games, these guys can just look out their windows. I don't even think they have to pull their shades at a certain time.
No.
I think that's part of paying the Cowboys for office space. And so
most coaches who took a visit to the facility would go, wait a minute, this is where we practice? And no.
Exactly. Like,
can we build a wall?
Seriously. And sometimes coaches get carried away with how secure every idea has to be because in the end it is blocking and tackling and blah, blah, blah. But, man, these are secrets. And if you're asking, is there cheating in the NFL? And we go back to, Belichick and the Spygate and we go to look at the Houston Astros, and their methods of cheating in every sport. Of course, everybody's looking for an edge, especially against their rivals.
Yes.
But
how far would you be willing to go? Would you be willing to go as far as, hey, I got a call from a guy who says he works for Company X and he's a huge Eagles fan, and he's sending us video if we want it. I mean, that's highly illegal, I would think.
Yeah.
It is, right? You can't.
I would imagine for sure. But
the NFL would have a problem with that.
But if I'm playing in a division with three other teams that are trying to destroy me and I got to play them twice, I'm definitely sending some college kid to each training camp to basically cover it for our team, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And we're disavowing that we know him if he ever gets caught.
It's a very small part of it. But, again, there's a zillion things that go into a football season. It's why we have Hard Knocks.
Yes.
It's why we have 100 people out here covering Cowboys camp because it's really fascinating.
But I do want to circle back and say I kind of don't get why the Cowboys are okay with every media member tweeting out every play.
I don't either.
Like you try to think through the relative benefits and ramifications of such a thing, and you say, well, is it that big a deal? I don't necessarily need my rivals to know this position battle or the guys we're thinking of cutting or the sets we are working on and running. I don't want that getting out, so why would I let it be tweeted out for free? Heck, if I didn't care at all, why wouldn't I just broadcast practice from incredible angles so my fans can just watch on DallasCowboys.com every day? Well, we don't do that because we don't want that information getting out there.
Okay, what are the restrictions for we watch NFL Network and ESPN when they go from training camp to training camp? And sometimes, hey, this is live action right now in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I don't know. Is there restrictions on that? What can they show?
I think usually it's one-on-ones and things that are not necessarily 11 on 11, but I'm sure they show some of that stuff. And maybe none of this matters, but I always wonder as I look at my timeline during a Cowboys training camp practice, and it's 15 angles of the same play.
Yeah.
And you just ask yourself, if I was the team and if I was the head coach, would I be cool with this? And maybe more importantly, could I stop it if I wanted to because my boss
apparently
doesn't care at all? Which then circles back to what we were talking about last night at dinner. Well, what if you tried something for 30 years and it wasn't working? Would you try to change it up and see if you found that 1% that's keeping you from success? Is this that? Probably not, but it's a really interesting conversation.
It is. And I think if you're looking at winning, which is supposed to be the name of the game,
we'd like to think.
I knew a coach that once said, unless it has something to do with me winning on Saturday, I don't want to hear about it.
Right.
And I'd like to see that attitude around here, and I don't think it exists. But I wonder, I think a lot of NFL teams probably going, yeah, okay, it's part of this circus that we're in.
Yeah.
And it's not just Dallas that has that kind of coverage.
Now, I will say a big part of what I enjoy is the loosening of the security of this entire operation. And let me explain real fast. 20 years ago, the concept of a guy like me or George having access to all 22 was impossible.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, I discovered this black market where you could get all 22, but not from legal means.
Yeah.
Not anybody could do it. You had to establish ways to do it that were a little bit wonky. And by 2015 or so, the NFL just said, screw it, let's just sell them to people that want to buy them. And now you can have all 22. I mean, I'm watching it this morning. There is all 22 from every game going back 10 years available to anybody with a credit card. And the league did not fold. It did not collapse. Scoring did not drop down to 0 points per game because everybody knows everybody's plays. So there is a level of access that the NFL has allowed. Because for years, dudes, they acted like if the all-22 got out,
the world would end.
The secrets of football would be explored by everybody, and then what?
Yeah.
And the fact is, it's only made us all more crazy about this sport, not less crazy. We're all excited to think that we can see things that we couldn't see in the past. So maybe in the end it's all the same, George. I don't know.
It probably doesn't make that big a deal.
But I am thankful that we do have access to where now we can really drill down on whether Tyler Guyton is good at pass protection.
Right. That's basically what it comes down to, what the dudes do on the field.
Because our dads didn't know whether Ralph Neely was good at it, right?
No, they just knew the game was on.
That's right.
The beer was cold. And they were going to watch it.
And we have more points. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. Little show from training camp. That was fun. Covered a lot of ground, and let's do it again next week. Not too far away, about 10 days away from the first preseason game for the Cowboys, and we got a preseason game, Hall of Fame game this week. So,
well,
man, it's football
I look forward
season.
to your full report at next week's episode.
We'll look at the all-22s of that by next week. All right, thanks to Peter Welton for putting up with us again this week, producing this thing. For Bob Sturm, I'm George Dunham, and we'll talk to you next week again on Football Friends.